Okay. So good evening, everyone. It's February 8, 2022, and we are here to convene another meeting of the Advisory Committee on Sustainability. And again, this is an advisory committee, and I know there's been a little question about this, but it is, at least at this time, an advisory committee to the mayor in order to avoid it being a committee of a public body. And as long as it isn't actually making decisions on public matters, then we're able to meet like this on Zoom for everyone's convenience and not be treating it as a public meeting where we would have to be in person. I see Matt Costora is now in the waiting room. So that is part of the reason why we're doing it that way. There may come a time where we would prefer to have the meetings in person, or we just change the form of the committee. But for now, I was doing this for everyone's convenience. So welcome. Before we talk about the possibility of a sustainability fair event, anything that anybody would like to say in welcome or in recap before we begin? Okay. Well then, why don't we start with talking about the sustainability fair event. There was some discussion previously, some desire about having a sustainability fair. There were a number of potential groups or vendors or organizations we might like to have there. One of the things that I think has been pointed out since, and I think I've also thought of this too, is there had been some talk about doing it on Earth Day. It's obviously a significant day. There are other Earth Day events we would be competing with if we tried to hold it on that day, and other organizations that we might want to have at our event that may already be committed to doing something on that day already. So I think that would be an interesting point and perhaps a reason to not have it on that day. But it may bear, question as to whether there's something we still want to do to commemorate Earth Day. And then do we still want to have a sustainability event? And if so, when and what form should it take? Thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I guess I'll jump in with, we did meet, and we talked about that. One of the first things we talked about, just because it's in April, it's not a time of year that, at least in Cleveland, we might have snow. And the idea of having, an outdoor event is probably, in addition to the fact that I think other groups will be having things that they've already planned probably a year in advance, and that we might be in competition with them. So that actual day probably isn't a good day for us to be able to do something. And it's kind of quick. It's what, 2 months away, 3 months away. And as we got deeper and deeper into talking about this, it's a pretty complicated matter. So that was one of the first things that, as a subcommittee, we decided probably Earth Day isn't going to happen.
Okay, that makes sense. And one of the things I also thought about just sitting here is if we had it at Walter Stinson Community Park in April, because there's still a risk of frost and cold temperatures, we don't even have the restrooms open typically then. That doesn't mean we couldn't, open them for a special occasion, but that's a problem. We don't want to hold events and not have facilities and accommodations like that. So Jackie, with the subcommittee that you were working on, was there any projected date or range of dates that came up as a possibility? Any thought on that?
Well, I guess we started to get bogged down in what exactly are we doing. I think we came to some understanding, or at least agreement, that it seemed like a fair should be sort of a kickoff of some of the decisions that we as a city have decided to do, sort of initiatives that we want to start. And that could be any one of the, or 4 or 5 of the things that we've talked about in the past. It just seemed like that if that was the focus of what we do, then that puts a particular way of looking at what we want to accomplish with the fair. We definitely thought, you know, it would be nice to have all these different organizations, but if we want to really use this as a time for University Heights to say this is what we're about, we probably need to, you know, focus on that and identify things that we think we need to be addressed or that we want to address. I mean, recycling is one thing, but there's been many things that we've talked about that we want to do. And so we wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
As a concept.
All right. I see that Mandy shared the notes from the subcommittee meeting in the chat. It is also, it's a link to the Google Drive. So that is something that can also be viewed there as well. And some of these things are here too about, you know, maybe not on Earth Day in April because it's so soon. Perhaps it could be later in the season, part of another city event. This could be competing with other events. It could be too cold, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, the traditional kickoff the summer event, University Heights, is the Memorial Day Parade. And, you know, that is a time when things are, you know, that's kind of our unofficial kickoff to summer. And that's around when we would also be, you know, opening restrooms and beginning, you know, summer programming. So, you know, it could very well be that we would want to consider doing something after that. And, you know, if we're looking at the summer, we really have all summer. And if we're looking beyond that, well, that's also a possibility. I like the idea of doing something this year if we have the means and desire and will to do it.
When we talk about the means
Okay,
to do it, I am wondering, I mean, does city council have to approve something like this? I would assume the city council would have to approve it.
Well, I guess it depends on what we're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about an event that's a major expense, then there has to be money appropriated and some sort of line item from which we can take expenses. If it's a, you know, if it's a modest event that has a you know, not a tremendous number of expenses, then it may be able to be found in an existing line under just general programming. Yeah. Or it could be like one of the things that's suggested here, it could be something that could fold into another event. We have a fall fest, for instance. You know, we could plan on having some sustainability themed tables at the fall fest. Maybe that's how this starts. And that is something that we're looking at doing in October. I can get the actual date here. Fall fest this year is October 2nd, which is a Sunday. And that's at the Mhm.
I think what we with our subcommittee, we really struggled with the whole idea. The recycling issue was a major theme in what we talked about, and it was the idea of getting bins to every person felt like putting the cart before the proverbial cart before the horse. In that we felt like education and experience and having some kind of guidance and leadership around recycling is probably a first step in that. And so there was a lot of discussion about the bins, quite frankly, and that we weren't really I don't want to say in favor of, but we thought it was premature to think about bins. That putting bins out was maybe the fourth or fifth thing. I mean, I don't know personally if I'm in favor of bins at all, quite frankly, but even if that was the end result, it just seems too premature to do that, because education and building a culture is what we need to do first. At least that's what's been successful in other places.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to give a few
Okay.
thoughts on this. Yeah.
Sure, please.
So I agree. Probably April is too early for this group. My personal thought would be something before the fall. Because this is something, especially if it's more of an educational thing, and to get people together and get people interested in outside in the summer. And I think May or maybe June. Certainly when the bathrooms are open. So I would support timing a little later than April. But I think maybe as a group, we should decide what the goals of the sustainability fair, first we should decide what we're going to call it, and when we're going to have it, but maybe what the goals are, because that might change, timing of what we do it. I like the list there's a lot of organizations of things of, people we could invite just kind of there to talk about what their different organizations do. I had some more thoughts about more making it educational of kind of, what can we do as a community, even more of a brainstorming. I wasn't part of the small committee when it met, but I put some things, I just added some to the Google Drive as far as like, we have a chalkboard of ideas. What does our community want to see for sustainability? There's a big wall they can write up. We can all talk about different initiatives, give some input as to what we want to see the city do, what we want to do as citizens. I think earlier in the summer or the spring might be a good time to kind of generate that while there's a lot of energy, before we go all and hide in the winter. So I would support more of a May, June timeframe.
Okay.
I found
Right.
something interesting on the city website. If you search for University Heights and sustainability, there is an actual page called sustainability. And it looks like it's content from 2016.
Hmm.
And it talks about the Sustainable UH Initiative. It looks like something that came about at one point and never went anywhere. So word of caution, but I thought about that as like, what could we call this? Sustainable UH. It sounds like a good idea, good name.
Yeah, I mean, that is if that's from 2016, that's certainly an old page that kind of floating out there. Is Mandy, I've been trying to ask this person that's calling themselves Zoom user. Is that Rebecca? Oh,
I think so. She said her chat is disabled, so she can't explain who she is.
okay. We'll try admitting her then. All right. Okay. Just when somebody shows up as Zoom user, I mean, we don't know who that is. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hey,
those
it's
Zoom
Rebecca
user.
Slifer.
Oh, hi,
So-
Rebecca. Okay, yeah, you're showing up on our
Yeah.
screen as Zoom user, so that's why we were keeping you in the waiting room. We didn't know who you were. Okay, then welcome. Thanks for being here.
Wanted to make
My
sure it wasn't a big
pleasure.
oil executive on our meeting.
Yeah, showing us his big oil.
Too late. I'm into far more unscrupulous activity, but go on.
All right. Well, welcome. Glad you're here now. Okay. All right. We were just talking about the possibility of a sustainability fair. You were part of the subcommittee that talked about this too, because Jackie kind of brought us up to speed on some of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Jackie said kind of everything I think we put into notes, so I'm not going to reiterate what she's already said. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to say that I agree with what Matt said about having a sustainability fair. I like the idea of a sustainability fair, just the sound of it
Mhm.
kind of feels good. But having it sooner than later, definitely not in the fall, sooner, to get people more interested in setting up their own rain barrels. That would be a perfect time of year to do it, earlier in the year.
Mhm.
Setting up their own compost pots outside, getting a composter, and, working on things like that to try to, encourage people that are interested in really doing something on their own property in their gardens this summer.
Mhm.
And right before the summer comes would be a really good time to do that,
Okay.
among many other things on the list. I mean, the list is very long of different vendors and different people who might come to this event.
Among the people that I would think would be interested in coming would be representatives from Rust Belt Riders.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
I'll get into that at the appropriate time.
Okay.
We're still talking about the fair, and I'll do about Rust Belt Riders shortly.
Okay. Well, Elizabeth brought up rain barrels and composting. So, rain barrels, we've had a rain barrel workshop before with the Cuyahoga Soil and Conservation District.
Mhm.
Could be that we could reach out to them and find out what their availability would be like for doing an event like this. We've done other rain barrel events, so it could be that, for a first sustainability fair, it doesn't have to be, it could be something as simple as we book a rain barrel event and then we do some other things around it.
Mhm.
And maybe Amy Roskilly over at the conservation district is the person that we arrange these with and usually comes out for them. So, we could talk to her about our idea of doing something like this and see what she thinks and see when she'd be available to come out. And maybe that could help, get it on the calendar, if you will, for May or June.
May I ask two questions?
Yeah.
We've had rain barrel events. I didn't go, but one question is, how many rain barrels are there in University Heights? And two, and I'm sorry to be stupid about this, but what is the relationship between rain barrels and sustainability? To me, rain barrels sound like a sewer issue.
Well, perhaps it is, to the extent that you're diverting stormwater from the sewer system and you're using that water instead, usually for gardening and, uses like that. They're not encouraging drinking that water, but using it for gardening uses. So, that's a lot of it right there, is that you're keeping it out of the storm sewer system.
And potentially rolling over into the combined sewage system.
Well, yeah.
Dumping raw sewage into what actually is our drinking water.
And I'm sure the rainbow people could tell us a lot
Prevent
more
that,
about
is that
these.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
This is not rain barrel related, but I just wanted to jump in and let you know, this was an assignment that Rebecca and I had, was to reach out to the Cleveland Heights Green Team.
Okay.
And one of the folks, the planning folks, did get back to me yesterday. So if it's helpful for planning to kind of reduce how much work we need to do, we could partner with them. I don't know how appropriate that is if we're a mayor advisory committee. And I think they're kind of like a freestanding group, but they've already planned an eco fair before last spring or summer, and it looks really awesome. And so they've already reached out to a lot of contacts and done a lot of planning. Could maybe use that information to our advantage.
Do you know if they have another eco fair planned for this year?
I do not, but I'm hoping to find out when I meet with them.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the things that I think we can explore at some point is whether, is how the form of this committee eventually continues. I mean, part of why it was formed the way it was out of pragmatism, because for one thing, I wanted to get started, but for another, because of COVID and we were trying to minimize public in-person meetings, having it be a mayor's advisory committee was something that allowed us to meet via Zoom without breaking public meeting laws. So if it becomes, appropriate or desirable, the will of the folks here, I'm trying to analogize this in many ways to if I had a meeting of concerned citizens at my office, and I do have those meetings, especially had them more often during the pandemic, that wouldn't be a public meeting. These folks would come to the office. We might go to a conference room. We'd sit around a table. We'd talk about this stuff. And in many ways, this is more like that than a public body. But this can transform over time, depending on what we want to do and what you want to do.
Mayor, I have a question. If we can leverage the work that the Cleveland Heights team has already done, or one of the things that could be to our advantage would be, let's not build something that they've already built, but we can't just show up empty-handed. So do we have any kind of budget to contribute to, yeah, we can bring our ideas and all that other stuff, but if we said, hey, we can help pay for advertising or something like that, is there any funding available if that were to help us in some way to, if we find it, it could be a good marriage with the Cleveland Heights Green Team, if we decided we wanted to leverage their eco fair in some way?
Yeah, I had not contemplated how that would work at this time.
Okay. Can I ask you to think about that? Because I think one of the things we kind of talked about as our subgroup was what would be our, there's things we would maybe want to do or need to do, but what we would need some kind of funding mechanism. Even if we had, even if we have a venue, there's still things that there would be some cost incurred no matter how economical we tried to make something.
Okay. Well, that's something that we will want to consider and eventually address. That's a good.
And if we're doing something that would be considered any kind of a joint project, might it be something where we could get some support from Future Heights?
Oh yeah, I
just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's well, I know that I would look into that if we can. I'll keep that in mind. And also, I know the Solid Waste District does some funding for small projects too. So I'm glad to chase up down the funding arm if those funding avenues, if you have ideas. I didn't know Future Heights had money, but I know the Waste District does too. So let's see what the green team comes back with.
They are looking to, Future Heights is looking to award some money for some projects, I understand.
Okay.
Future Heights does do that from time to time. Brian, you may be able to weigh in better than I can about Friends of the Walt and how they got a grant from Future Heights.
I wasn't involved with the direct submission there. That was Iran for the most part. I know that I don't know whether their mini grant application period has closed yet or not. I know it was around recently, but I could look at that.
Okay.
So actually, Brian, that prompted another idea. Do we or would we want to consider something with the Friends of the Walt for our eco fair as well, right? Because is there something like, I don't know, do you need you guys have a day where it's like, okay, everybody come help us pull weeds or something like that?
Last year was every Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
You're
I'll
out
I'll
there.
put that in the vault.
Yeah, yeah.
That'll go in my vault.
9 to 11 a.m. We were out. There was a group of at least 4 to 5 people out just about every weekend.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so it may be then that we want to, I mean, we've talked about several things with regard to a sustainability fair or a sustainability event. I don't know that we've settled on any one thing, and it may be that tonight we don't, especially since there are some other things that we are, looking at.
I can follow up after talking to the green team,
Okay.
the Cleveland Heights folks. Maybe that will help give us some more guidance.
Mhm. It might. And mhm.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
When we've had fairs at the Walt,
Mhm.
how are they organized and what's the cost to some of those? Like when people have booths and they're selling things, or what's the cost to having something like that?
Well, if we're talking about Fall Fest, that's a city event, and I think there's a $25 booth fee, which in some instances has been waived, but generally there's a $25 booth fee, especially if you're selling something. When it comes to like a food truck, like Odd Dog Coffee, we have a food truck ordinance, so that's governed differently. They are able to purchase, well, they pay for a license that allows them to be out at the park. Lexi Fondue did something similar to that with her hot dog cart that she was trying out in the fall. So that's not really the same thing, but yeah, I mean, there have been some other impromptu type things that were kind of under the radar and just sort of happened and aren't really officially city events. Like we've had Moises Borges just kind of show up and play his guitar and bring an amp and a generator and just play for a couple hours. That was not an official city event, and he didn't get a permit that we charged him for or anything. That was just something that happened and was organic. I think we've had like a what do you call that? What do you call that group that does the? It's not free sale. It's people that give away stuff rather than
Swap
stuff.
meet?
Yeah, it's like a swap
Like a
meet,
swap meet?
but no money changes hands.
Oh,
It's
free cycles.
free cycle.
Free
Yes.
cycle.
Yeah.
they
Yes.
did it in South Euclid.
Mhm. Yeah, there was a free cycle event that happened at the Walt, I think, last year that just kind of popped up and did their thing. I don't think they technically asked for permission. It was just something that they just did. And it's kind of a public space, and nobody told them they couldn't. So there was no fee collected there. There was no permit sought or paid for. But if one were to do something that had more of a, if the city was going to promote it, then probably there's going to be a permit involved, because it makes it sort of official, if you will, on some level.
Yeah, I gotta imagine if we had vendors out there, selling solar or selling electric cars, and they'd be willing to pay a permit to talk to people interested, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Doing something like this sustainability fair that we're discussing, and having different vendors participating in that. If we're discussing with them and confirming that people can make a purchase of whatever service or product that they're selling, as long as we've discussed it ahead of time, I would think would not be improper. Correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Uh, I think that could be part of what an event like this is about. I mean, it would be odd, I suppose, to have somebody come out regarding solar power and solar panels, but they're not allowed to talk about the panels they actually sell.
Yeah.
Just back to the original question about how many booths can fit in on the wall. Do you, I mean, just, I know you don't know exactly, but about how many booths? Because
Oh,
I mean,
mhm.
I bet you this list, if we invited half of this list,
Mhm.
most of those people, if it was a good weekend, they would come.
Mhm.
And so I guess I'm more concerned about the fact that we'll probably have too many. I don't know, maybe that's my wish, but
Yeah, I think for the last Fall Fest, I think we had 40 or 50 booths. Brian, you were there.
fabulous.
Do you remember?
It was, yeah, it would,
Mhm.
yeah, there was at least that many. There were
Mhm.
a lot of people there.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just marked off in the grassy area, and then you got the big grass field beyond the gazebo, and we just kind of drew, lines on the field and put numbers down and told people what their number was, and then they were able to go over to that number and set up. So
What
yeah,
if we did,
there's
what
space.
if we did, what if we did something like that, but also part of it is have an area where presentations can be made. So at 1 o'clock, this company is making a presentation. At 2 o'clock, this one.
Yep.
In
I think that
a given area.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
I think
Yeah.
I think that might even be the spot to do what's recyclable. I mean, they have a thing, I don't know, I mean, I'm kind of into it, but it's called a waste audit.
Mhm.
And this lady does this great job of, you dump your garbage. I mean, I don't want everybody to bring their garbage, but, and you just,
Right.
and you put what's recyclable, what's not, why is it recyclable? And it's really interesting. I mean, it is recycling, and it would be perfect. It would be a perfect opportunity, educational opportunity to do that. So I mean, I was thinking that having the gazebo be, the place where people would, do presentations, sort of hands-on presentations. That was kind of my idea about how that would happen. What do other people think?
I agree with you, Jackie. I think it would be kind of like we could have like 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 a nonprofit education section. We could have the learning events in the gazebo, and then we could have like a vendors who are like we sell and install solar panel guys, or the folks who are doing the kind of the green type of sales types things, right? So that they're not really there to sell things exactly, but they're because a lot of times like people go like the home show, right? Like I'm going to go to see all the people who install bathrooms, right? But
Mhm.
I'm not going to buy a bathroom on the spot, but I'm going to just learn. It's one place to learn more about all the things out there.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question? This is a planning question. So like for the fall festival, is there a staff person who heads up organizing that? Like someone we could pick their brain, like how did you get this organized?
Yes, yes. There are two staff people that work on that. One is Ben Schaefer, who is my assistant. He's also the special projects coordinator for the city. So Fall Fest counts as a special project. And then Mike Cook, who is the communications and civic engagement coordinator. He also works on Fall Fest. And so they kind of split up those responsibilities and work on that together, because Fall Fest is one part civic engagement, one part special event. So if we were to do something like this, I would probably want to get them involved.
Yeah, if we need to, I know somebody who coordinates events. If we had to hire someone to do it, just as like a one-time deal. I'd like to say I can do it, but I also know I gotta be realistic of my time limits.
Yeah,
Maybe we can see about inviting one or both of them to our next meeting. Give us some input.
perhaps. Okay.
Idea.
I was just gonna say, I support that idea of having like an agenda and using the gazebo as a central presentation. I
Yeah.
think that'd be nice, to
Yeah.
advertise. And then even those people, after they give their recycling, what goes in my recycling talk or how to make a rainbow talk, then they can go to their booth and people can talk to them afterwards too. I think
Yep.
that'd give it some
Yeah.
nice organization.
And by
And there's
then we'll
gonna-
know.
There would
But
be
that-
people certainly from Cuyahoga Recycles that could come and make some presentation.
They
Yeah.
they do all sorts of good stuff. They also do composting. They
Mhm.
do the recycling. They do there was something else that they do related to waste. But anyway, they're really very helpful. I mean, those were the teachers that I had for the class that I took. And they have the other thing about them that's really nice is they have a book that they call Pass It On. So, I mean, their thing is reduce, reuse, recycle. So it's all three of those things.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you have musical instruments, they have places that will take musical instruments if you want to give them away. Or if you have a bowling ball and you want to figure out what to do with it, it's not recyclable. They have a book that will tell you who would take a used bowling ball. So that's another thing that they do that's really great.
Yeah, some of those resources I know are available on their website with regard to being able to find a way to recycle certain things that you can't just put in your municipal recycling.
Right.
I don't know if they get down to the granular level like you're talking. I don't know if bowling ball is listed and things like that, but certainly, certain kinds of batteries and televisions and things like that are things that they do have on there as far as resources of where you can take those things when they have the list of things that they recycle, the 5 items that they want you to put into the recycling, and then they've got the items that are recyclable but they don't process. So
Right.
Jeff just posted something that was another thing why I'm a proponent of a fair like this. I just clicked his link and I see there's a button that says ask me about recycling. I would love to like walk around the fair and have a button that says ask me about my solar panels or ask me about electric cars and get conversations going, get communication going about sustainable efforts we are already doing in our community and spreading the word out. I think that would be a cool thing that, a table where you could just have people have a sticker and say, hey, what are you interested in talking about to other people so they know what to ask about.
I think that's
I
been.
think somebody suggested having a board where people can kind of put up things that they're interested in. I thought that was a great idea.
Because I know one of the things I think we sort of it seems like we're challenged with as a committee is how do we prioritize, like what are the important things, right? So even if we just did what are the things you're interested in and ask people to write it down on a piece of paper and put it on a whiteboard or stick it in a box, it might give us a better sense of what are the community interests, right? Because if it's like everybody's really eager for solar panels but nobody wants I don't know, nobody wants recycling, okay, I'm just saying that just as an example. It would be good to know that would, I think, be able to give our committee some more focus around
What type of focus or what type of feedback can we get from the city on, say, the Facebook page or Instagram? I see a lot of things, Mayor, that you've posted. And how can we participate in that if we can, to utilize that to get some feedback from people throughout University Heights that would have questions or comments or suggestions regarding recycling or other areas that we're talking about.
Well, I think there's an opportunity there. And I think that's something where if we got Mike involved on the communications and civic engagement side, where, he runs our city's social media. So if there were if there were some things that we wanted to put out on the city's social media that were kind of coming from this committee, then that would be coordinating with Mike would be the thing to do. And maybe, one of the ideas was having Mike and or Ben at the next meeting, if we're talking about a sustainability fair, bringing that up, at that time as well to Mike might also be good. So is there anything else we want to discuss at this time about this, and then maybe just continue it to the next meeting, see if Ben and Mike can join us for a meeting, and Ben or Mike, or
I
both?
think, and then by that point, hopefully Mandy and I'll get connected with the Cleveland Heights Green Team, and we'll know more, and that we could have some more direction by that point.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, I know there's some other items here, so we may want to, address some of these too. Anything anybody else wants to say about sustainability fair before we move on?
I was just gonna say probably good to get input from the green team and then discuss next meeting, but should probably make a goal to decide what the date potentially would be and kind of what the next steps forward. And if we want to wait till we get a little more feedback from other people, that's great. But
Well, maybe we could make that a goal for the next meeting, that we figure out a date and a structure at that time.
Yeah, so I think that's what we'll need to reach out to people and say, hey, are you available this date?
Okay.
Yeah, you've mentioned.
I was thinking.
You mentioned rain barrels as a rain barrel workshop as like a core thing to
It could be.
organize around, but yeah, maybe think of a few of those types of things, and whenever we can get those core items scheduled, we could figure out, pick up a date from that.
Yeah, composting could also be one of those core events.
Right.
I could host a box breakdown workshop. I've been trained by the master.
I had mentioned that in some emails about that, and the picture that had been on social media of the overflow box that we have outside City Hall,
Yes,
was particularly disgusting, and just reminds us as a committee that something, regardless of what's happening about recycling with the plans that had been presented, that's being discussed, but there are certain things that are in place now that can be improved upon, and that happens to be one of them. I've been advocating for improved signage, but I think a lot of time people mean well when they want to drop something off there, but they don't take the extra effort to break down a carton, and then things get as bad as was indicated in the picture. Certainly, it's not like that all the time,
no,
but
yeah,
but
and you're right. And technically, it'd be better if they broke them down. They're going to get sent even if they're not. But when you have in that picture, you have all these people that haven't broken them down, and there's just this it's not a good use of the space because they haven't been broken down, and thus, you get what you saw in that picture.
I'm also concerned that to get it picked up here at home, things are going to get wet. And that's part of the problem, that, as I understand, that once the cardboard gets wet, it really can't be properly recycled.
That's correct.
So my thinking is going back to the idea of dropping it off there at City Hall and encouraging people to do that, although they could do that in their blue bags or containers if we're getting to that. But promoting taking it there to City Hall, but breaking it down, taking newspaper, doing the same thing. And talk about stacking it if that's even possible. With the size of that, that may not be necessarily feasible, but you can still make an effort to try to make better use of space.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that is one of the big problems that we have right now with how we're handling recycling is that there's a lot of cardboard that gets wet and damaged and can't be recycled, or if it gets piled up outside that box and it gets rained on, well, then the good effort turns into not right. And one of the reasons I'd been promoting these larger cans is because there's room in those cans to put boxes, and then, flattened preferably, but you put them in and the lid shuts, and then they're, protected from the weather and the elements. We've seen too often, and I've observed and others have observed, and, let me know it, they flatten the boxes, they twine them, and then there's no room in the front of the Kubota to put the boxes, so they end up in the back anyway. And once they're back there, they're not coming back. They're just treated as trash, and that's too bad, because resident made an effort to do the right thing and prepare boxes for recycling, and then they're not recycled at all. And that's
just this week.
Mhm.
Just this week, I started breaking down the boxes that I've had, and I've got a small space in my garage where I'll have enough of that, then I'll throw that in the trunk and drop it off at City Hall.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, but a lot of people aren't going to do that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
true.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's another education point. I think a lot of people aren't, but there's a lot of people that will if they know, oh, it sits out in the rain, it won't get recycled. Okay, well, I'll drop it off next time when it's not overflowed, or, oh, this doesn't go in the recycling. So again, I think that's stuff that we can address with our fare for those who are willing to listen.
Yeah, that and the social media, getting involved with Mike Cook would be great. I think that could be very helpful in getting people more informed and educated. Not everybody's going to care, but those people that do care but don't know the right thing to do, that can be helpful.
Yes.
I've noticed a lot of people will throw things in the front of that, and it builds up in the front, and you got all this empty space in the back. It's kind of another educational effort, I guess.
Is that
Go ahead.
Is that something that service personnel are responsible for, or they truly aren't in trying to consolidate?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, that somebody brings it, they figure they'll put it in towards, instead of taking it all the way to the back, they'll just drop it off in the front and leave it for somebody else to take care of.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
could be part of the signage too, I suppose.
Right. I mean, part of the part of the issue there with the service yard and with the recycling is that we don't have the personnel who are there beyond City Hall's regular hours to guide that. And in fact, because of EPA considerations, we actually have signage out there that says not to do that, to not drop off things, to not dump things when the yard is not technically open. I mean, people still do it. And when it comes to recycling, you know, we kind of quietly say, yeah, we'd rather have you put your cardboard in there, even if it's after hours. But it's kind of with a wink and a nod, you know, we don't have the yard monitored the way that we ought if we're going to have people do that. And it leads to some of the problems that we're having, you know, things that are overflowing. You know, it's nice to see the blue bin filled with recyclables, but there are other abuses that happen. You know, people leave broken toilets, you know, just in the service yard, you know, because they're dumping it off, and they'll do that over the weekend. And then they'll drive in and leave it and drive away. And we had instances, this was a bigger problem. It's not as much bigger problem as it used to be, but we had contractors who, instead of disposing of their commercial waste properly, were just dumping it in the service yard after hours. And then our own service employees were sifting through all kinds of construction waste and having to deal with it. That's a little far flung here maybe from what we're talking about, but it is one of the reasons, it is one of the issues with the service yard. And, you know, if we were to tell people, yes, you can come and drop things off here, then technically we need to have somebody there to monitor it during drop off hours. And that means paying somebody to be there. You know, and maybe we should do that. Maybe that is something we should do, but we haven't been doing it.
I just have a question about that, Mayor.
Yeah.
So the sign that says no dumping,
Mhm.
does that really mean don't come back in this area regardless of whether you're putting cardboard or not? Because I didn't read it that way, and maybe signage would help.
Yeah, I mean, the signage that says no dumping, I think we've been treating the idea that the cardboard in the bin to the right of the sign is not really dumping. You're putting cardboard in that bin. But if you bring your trash bags, or if you bring a broken toilet, or if you bring, a piece of furniture or something, you know, during regular service department hours, you're welcome to do that, but they don't want you doing it when people aren't there. And that's the no dumping part.
What do people do with those paper recycling that's usually in like school and library parking lots? Is that something that's an alternative for cardboard and paper? And can't that be somewhere more public so that people aren't quote unquote sneaking and putting things in there?
You mean like, well, the
Like those
library.
big yellow bins?
Mhm.
Yellow and green bins, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah, those are, I know they have that over at Bertram Woods Library.
Right.
They have that also down the street at the Unitarian Church. So it's interesting that was 5 minutes apart, and I saw those in both locations. But that's, is that doing the same thing as what we're attempting to do with our large bin? The same, basically the same materials.
I think with cardboard, yeah.
Well, cardboard and newspaper and
area.
magazines.
Right. I think part of the problem with the service area is it's not, it feels a little bit like you're not supposed to be back there. And I think it makes it easy for people to dump things. And I mean, a toilet is pretty outrageous, but I've seen many other things back there that probably shouldn't be back there. And so to have it in sort of such a private place, is part of the problem. And I was just wondering, Mayor, is there a different place that people can bring? Can that service be available somewhere else besides that yard? Is there a place?
Well, offhand, no. I mean, we don't have a lot of extra spaces. I mean, and you know, we haven't really discussed whether we would put something like that at the park or what. I mean, we don't have, the only other, you know, municipal yard that we have in the city is over on Kerwin, and most people don't even know about it. It's behind the Papa John's. and we don't have recycle bins over there, and that yard is generally locked anyway. So we don't really have a space set aside for what you're talking about, and we would need to identify such a space if we were to do it. The focus has really been on picking up recyclables from people's homes and being able to process them and allowing people to come to the service yard. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really work. There are things we could be doing that would probably be better. That may be a direction that we could look at going, but I don't have in mind a place where we could just put bins that are out in the open. And even then, they ought to be monitored, because we don't want people throwing in things that shouldn't be there.
Right.
Could I make an observation here as time
Sure.
goes on here?
Yes, Jim.
We have a service department that's responsible for picking up trash, including recyclables. We have a plan proposed by you to have bins that will accommodate cardboard as well as other recyclables. I don't really think that this committee should be getting into the details of how we run the service department. I mean, maybe we should have rotating dumpsters on tree lawns so that people can dump their trash, you know, in the front and their garbage in the rear. This is silliness. Why is this committee spending this time talking about how does the service department do its job?
Well, Jim, I think it's okay to discuss some of this stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of, I mean, I want to say that there's a lot of mystery, but I don't think everybody knows exactly how the service department works. And I think I think the questions were fair about, you know, what, you know, if we're going to have people drop things off, you know, is there a better way to do that? It may be a slightly different direction than the proposal that I had made with regard to the bins. And I do think that the key to more and better recycling in our community is to continue the service aspect where we pick it up when we come to your house. But, you know, the question was put with regard to could we have a different or better bin? And yeah, I don't mind talking about that.
As I understand, the closest to what we do currently is Shaker Heights, and I think Pepper Pike, as far as going in the back to pick things up. And they may be doing something better. Perhaps it's just a matter of educating the community, because we're third from the bottom, and both of them are doing better than that.
Yeah, Shaker's
just another thought.
Yeah.
And now they don't have a closed container for their recyclables, I understand.
They have a 5-gallon bucket, which I like. I have a.
I'm not advocating doing that. I think that's
family,
bad.
2-person, two cat family, and I think I would fill up the 5-gallon bucket multiple times a week.
Yeah, that's tiny.
Yeah.
My.
You know,
Yeah.
I know I have a son who lives in Shaker, and he says he doesn't use that because he needs more space. So he uses something that's larger, but it's not covered. So, you know, in that case, you forget about the cardboard. But we are getting off track somewhat, I suppose. And there's other things we
Yeah,
should
we do want to talk about
get
Rust
back
Belt
to with the
riders
agenda.
and single-use plastics. So why don't we move on then to Rust Belt riders and talk a
Okay.
little bit about that?
I had a conversation following contact that Brian had made with Rust Belt riders,
Mhm.
and I spoke with Zoe Appisdorf,
Mhm.
and she got following our conversation, she got back to me with some information about University Heights currently, as far as subscribers to their services. Now, we had talked about doing some work with them, and currently there are 25 University Heights residents who they are picking up from, and drop off, which are the containers that I was talking about, and they would very much like to extend the services from the communities that they're in right now and add University Heights to it. And they're thinking in terms of the parking lot at the Walt being ideal. I am going to be sending an email out to everybody to send you some more information about that. And so currently there are 25 people where they actually go to people's homes where they have a bucket that they supply. People are putting in a variety of different kind of food scraps. And there are 31 University Heights members who are currently dropping off their scraps at containers in areas around University Heights. There are 3, I know, in Shaker Heights, including the Nature Center at Shaker Lakes, Bexley Park in South Euclid, Cleveland Heights has, I think, just one right now, and they would love to get us involved, and conceivably, if that takes off as well as they would think that it would, that they would wind up increasing maybe threefold with the number of people who would be dropping off food waste.
Okay.
I've learned a fair amount about it already, and I'd be happy to answer questions that anybody has that I've learned. Brian also has some of the same information, but I'll get you more information and I can put something in a link now if people would like me to, although I plan to send out an email that'll have more information still.
Yeah, I'm curious about pricing, and I'm curious about in municipal settings where municipalities make space available, you know, who pays for what to make that happen. I mean, those are some of the things I'm interested in finding out about.
Yeah, I understand there's a meeting that they'll have with you and Brian. And if you would want me to, I would be happy to attend as well. But the cost is $10 for a member for a drop off. You can drop off whenever you want. You get a combination to a lock on the container. And I've got some pictures that that I had taken at a few of the locations in the area that I currently dropped off at. The one at the Nature Center was particularly interesting. They've got, I think, at least 6, maybe 8 containers right now. These are probably similar in size. I don't know the exact size, but similar in size, I think, to the containers that you were talking about, Mayor, for pickup recycling. Good size containers, but that have a
$10
combination lock.
Is that a $10 one-time fee or monthly?
No, it's a
yearly?
$10 monthly. No, it's a $10 monthly fee, Jim.
$10 a month, so it's 120 a year.
Yeah, to the
Okay.
To the individual or family subscriber,
Yeah.
and then for that you get the combination to go there and drop off whenever you want. Now it can be wherever they have a facility drop off. As I mentioned, the Nature Center or Bexley Park or by the Unitarian Church, etc. While we're talking about some other things, I'll put a link on here so you can see that even before I would send the email. If you want, also as an alternative to drop off, some people like the idea of having a pickup right at their house, and then they supply this rather large bucket that you put all your scraps in, and they come out once a week. But that's a higher cost. That's $20 a month.
I also want to add to that as part of your subscription, you get you're able to have a percentage off their compost. So if the soil that you create by dropping off these food waste, you're able to buy compost at a reduced rate. So that's also part of what they do.
Yeah. Well, that's for the $20 drop off. That's
it's for both.
Something I could be mistaken, but
I think with the drop off, you get an actual bag of it. So
Never heard that one.
yeah.
Okay.
I would just say my thoughts. I think it'd be great. It'd be more convenient to get a drop-off place. I don't personally use Rust Belt Riders. I started looking into this a year ago and do composting in my own yard. But from a city standpoint, Mr. Mayor and Brian, it reduces a ton of trash. I mean, I probably have half of my trash is like, I use half the amount of trash by actually composting the food waste, you know. They're like, I used to put 2 cans out a week and now it's 1 can for a family of 4, you know. So it really, if more people did it, it's better environmentally, it's regenerative, it's a local company, and it would save some work on the city services department side too. So I don't have any interest in the company or anything like that, but it's my personal.
Okay.
I totally agree. I use it, and I definitely have less garbage at the end of the week. I have 1 garbage can, and now, I mean, I used to have 2, now I only have 1.
They take everything. I mean, I also do the backyard compost like like Matt does. But I can't put meat or citrus or things like that in there.
Yes, but that,
Does
Yeah,
Rust Belt
yeah.
Riders take meat and citrus?
they take
yes,
anything.
Oh,
Anything.
yeah, they pretty
even
much take anything.
Yeah, they'll take cartons that say they're compostable. You can't put those cartons into your backyard because the temperature never gets high enough. But they'll take they will take cartons that are
So like those cartons from like Stone Oven, when they have.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm, okay.
Or sometimes not the styrofoam, obviously, but
Right. Mhm,
the egg cartons
mhm,
are also compostable.
mhm.
Yeah, so I would, if we had something over at the Walt, I would probably subscribe to it just as a supplement to our backyard pile.
There's a YouTube video I just put a link onto. Little 2-minute overview of what they do.
And I just added a link to EcoSpeak CLE podcast. They're on my new favorite local podcast. Dan Brown talks about the history of it. So
Matt turned me
nice.
onto that as well. It's really, really great. They have topics on Rust Belt. They've already talked with Rust Belt Riders, the Ohio City Farm, a recycling audit program they did in Brooklyn, and Great Lakes Brewing Company.
Nice. I'll have to give that.
What
a look.
does that have to do with it? What does
Great
Great
Lakes?
Lakes have to do with it?
They have been from the start a super sustainable company. Listen to the episode. It was really really eye-opening, all the stuff that they've done and all the partners they've been involved with over their history.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to listening to some of this and meeting with them. Seems to me I ought to probably listen to this podcast before the meeting so that I go in with a fair amount of knowledge already, and then I can ask better questions. I hate going into a meeting where I'm asking some of the basic stuff that I could have read about elsewhere. It doesn't feel like a good use of their time or mine, but especially theirs. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for this. This is good stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna want to, yeah. All right. And Brian, I think we've got something scheduled.
Yeah. Ben sent out a message for this Friday.
Okay. Okay, good. Well then I will want to do that. Let's see what time on Friday. This is the 11th. Friday at 2. Okay. Okay. Jeffrey, you volunteered to sit in.
Yes.
Brian, I don't know how you feel about it, but Jeffrey, if you would like to, if you're available Friday at 2, you might be able to join us.
Yes, I'd love to.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Friday at 2:00.
Yeah.
Oh, what time? Excuse me. I'm going to reschedule me. Yeah. I had something at 2:00
Oh
that I
no.
will reschedule.
Oh, okay. Great. Good. Okay. Yeah. Looks like it's a Zoom meeting. So yeah. I'll ask Ben to add you to that. Okay. Sure. Jeffrey.
I can relate, Jeff. I have a personal planner who lives with me that, I always have to check it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, Edna just happened to be around the corner and she heard me.
Well, that was fortunate.
You're very lucky men to have those women in your lives.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I've been. Yeah,
Well, not everybody has a bend, so.
no,
Mhm.
no.
Oh, can I interject
Okay.
something? Um,
Yes,
I was watching the council meeting last night, and on YouTube, the recording afterwards, didn't see live, and
Okay.
then the recording dropped off.
oh, it did?
Yeah, towards, it showed how long it was in total, but it went to black after, I think after you spoke about, let's see,
Cedar
I
Road?
don't remember. Yes,
Oh,
Yeah, you know what?
yeah,
I
right
thought
at,
that was I thought that was our Wi-Fi. So
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that other people had that experience too.
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That was I did hear from a resident who was watching it live that it dropped off partway through and he thought maybe it was just his Wi-Fi, but you're mentioning it, Jeffrey, Jackie, you're mentioning it, maybe we had a technical issue and didn't realize it.
I was particularly interested because I wanted to see what they were going to say, what council was going to say about your proposal. And,
Well,
Right.
It
the
wasn't on the agenda.
proposal wasn't on the,
oh,
but there is a finance committee meeting on Thursday where the entire budget's up for discussion and that's one of the items. So yeah, so Thursday, I believe there's a Zoom stream of that using an owl. So yeah, if that would be the meeting to watch regarding that.
yeah, there've
So
been a
is
number
that
of us. There've been a number of us who have sent their views about recycling to various council members. And I don't know what impact that will have, but
I don't either. I guess we'll find out. But thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. All right. So I think
Response, Jeffrey?
I think we can switch over now to single-use plastic reduction. And I think the focus there was on plastic bags especially. But Jim, I know you asked to have that on tonight, or you asked. Well, it's a variation of what you asked for, I think. So, Jim, you want to say a few words about this?
Most of what I've had to say, I've already distributed by email, and I see no point in repeating it. I will say that sitting here for the past hour or so, I do have to wonder whether the idea of springing into action within the foreseeable future on anything is really part and parcel of this committee. But I did not originally see this committee as a government committee per se. I'm still very skeptical. If it were a government committee, then I can already hear we'll say the chair of the finance committee attempting to veto any proposal that involves spending money before it's even been explored in public. That's one of the reasons that I'm interested in what citizens can do, not in what governments can do. Having been around from the very first Earth Day, in the 70s, citizen protesting was effective. The Environmental Protection Administration, just to cite one example, was formed in part because of popular pressures that were symbolized, if you will, by Earth Day. So I have suggested that the way to get rid of plastic, which is a huge problem that I'm not going to deliver a lecture on it. People can look it up. That the way to do this is to stop it at the source, not in having a more convenient place to dump it. And for that reason, I've suggested that one of the sources of of this ubiquitous plastic is grocery stores. And in University Heights, there are basically 3 grocery stores: Whole Foods Market, which does not use reusable bags; Target, which is 1 store out of, I think I read 2,000 or more, that's owned by what used to be Dayton Hudson. And then there's Little Heinen's on Green Road, which is a local company. I think they have a few stores in Chicago, but mostly they're here in Cuyahoga County. The owners, or at least one of them, has been relatively militant on on his insistence that they should be allowed to use plastic bags. He wrote an article in the Plain Dealer a couple of years ago opposing the countywide ban on those bags. That ban, as I'm sure you all know, was suspended by the state government. The excuse was COVID-19, no less. That ban is now, or has expired, I think, as of January. Whether or not the county ban is going to be revived, I don't know. I sent an email to our very own county councilwoman, who is a sponsor of the ban. Not heard back from her, so I don't know what the status of that is. But I think that if people, and I mean a large number of people, are interested in cutting back on plastic pollution, that there is something they can actually do to at least persuade 1 store to discontinue the bags. I don't know how long it will take, don't know how feasible it is, don't know whether it might inspire other communities to put similar pressure on this company. I don't know whether that will send a message to other users of the bags, but it seemed to me like something that could be done in fairly short order, build over time. And again, I mean, to me, boycotts to achieve political ends by corporations is sort of, how can I say, part and parcel of life on Earth. Other people may not have that experience.
Okay.
I don't use plastic bags, so
I
I don't even
remember,
use plastic bags for dog food.
Giant Eagle had stopped, I believe, a while back voluntarily from using the plastic bags, if memory serves me correctly, and then wound up going back to it with the pandemic because nobody wanted to accept bringing in the canvas bags. Whole Foods that had encouraged the use of canvas bags and were giving people credit for doing that. They had gone away from that. I'm not sure if they're doing the credit anymore, but you can now bring the canvas bags back again.
My experience at Whole Foods, Jeffrey, was that during the pandemic, the people at the checkout line would not handle the reusable bags that customers brought in. They wouldn't pack them. So if you wanted to bring your own bag and pack it yourself as it came off, off the register, so to speak, you could still do that. And you're quite right. Rather than charging people extra for bags, which at one point was part of the county program to ban them, Whole Foods offered, I think, 5 cents a bag credit that you could either keep for yourself or contribute to some worthy cause. But Whole Foods, of course, Whole Foods is a whole culture, or started out that way. A bit different under Amazon. But Whole Foods was always very big on organic food and other sustainable products that they sold. So but Whole Foods is a good example of a grocery store that survived without ever offering disposable plastic bags.
They still make you pack your own bag if you bring it in, though. That's ongoing. Cigars gives you credit for bringing a bag also.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Jim, when Whole Foods first opened in University Heights in 2007, they did have plastic bags, but they did get rid of them. I want to say maybe around 2009 or 10 or something. But I know they exist. I know they existed, and I'm going to tell you how I know. In my box of Christmas ornaments, I have some Whole Foods plastic bags in which I store some Christmas lights and things like that. And whenever I pull them out at the holidays, it's like, oh, this is so funny. I've saved it from the landfill and it actually existed.
Well, and now it could be a valuable collectible.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a market for. Maybe you could sell it at the Walt someday. Just go out and see if people are collecting them.
There's a market for a lot of things. Who knows?
Indeed.
Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, they got rid of using plastic bags at checkout a long time ago, and that's good. Okay, so my sense about a boycott is that it's not a first step. That approaching Heinen's, and I grant that if there's an article that Jeffrey Heinen or some other member of the Heinen family wrote about plastic bags, and if that is still his position, that may actually be like a good place to start, to say, concerned citizen, or we are, concerned about this issue, and we are aware of your article, but we're hopeful that you would listen to some other ideas and maybe change your position, or perhaps you already have, or of course they still have the plastic bags. So, my thought is there are other ways of trying to convince before going to a boycott.
What do you have in mind?
Well, letter writing, approaching them and saying, hey, we've got an issue here potentially. Seeing if they would do it voluntarily if we just asked. Saying, we're trying to engage in more sustainable practices. The county is discouraging the use of plastic bags. Granted, there's been this history then with the back and forth with Columbus. Would you do what Whole Foods has already did some time ago and dispense with the use of plastic bags? And maybe the answer will be no, but I feel like if one wants to organize that kind of effort, asking before you just jump in with something more, it feels like there should be a progression to that kind of thing. And maybe that's just my law background talking. Usually I mean, this isn't really the same thing, of course, but usually I would send somebody a letter if I have, some position I want to assert before I would take, more serious action.
That's one of the reasons I asked Jeffrey whether he had received a response from the city council to his letter about recycling.
Mm-hmm.
I got responses from not everybody. I had sent out one group letter, and I got individual responses from most, but not all council people.
That's good.
I had some additional contact with Brian, especially because we're meeting together for the committee. And the sense that I did get was that it's going back to the survey that had been discussed, that had not
I
been
laugh out loud, Mr. Mayor.
approved.
Yeah, going back to the survey, is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
The mail, yes. I just want to claim credit for having predicted that very thing on University Heights Forum a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I also sent an email to two council people that I thought might be amenable. And I heard back from one of them, and one of them I didn't hear back from. And wasn't so much a commitment as in, yeah, I agree it's a problem. We need to do better. But it really wasn't a commitment. And the other council person I did hear from.
Chris, I did get a response, a sense of commentary that we're not doing all that we should. We should be better. We're going to be looking to be better, but at the same time, I also got the feeling that they're not ready to forge ahead into what the mayor had proposed.
I
And
tend to
the
agree.
survey was mentioned by at least 2 or 3 council
Okay.
people.
I can guess their
I-
names.
I would say that the political will isn't there yet. And that's where the sustainability fair may come in handy, where you get more pressure from below.
I think a lot of what I'm feeling from our conversations tonight is that it gets down to a matter of educating the public more about what to do. And perhaps depending upon whether this survey that has been discussed in the past is already established and can't be changed, or if that's open to review, and perhaps maybe some input from our committee to make suggestions as to what could be included on there. I would be for that. You know, if they're not going along with the proposal that the mayor has, that if what they want to do is do a survey first, then there should be some input from the public. And we're the first people, I think, that could comment on that
Pardon me for interrupting,
in
Jeffrey,
helping to
but
put the
number
survey
one,
together.
okay, number one, the subject at the moment has to do with plastic bags in grocery stores. Number two, the subject of the survey of which you refer is not new. Don't know how closely you followed the mayoral election last year, but that was it first proposed back in June, I think?
No,
The first draft. I mean, this is a very old subject with a very long history.
It was longer ago than that, Jim. The survey, the survey, the proposal, the survey proposal was brought to me by the then chair of the Service and Utilities Committee about a week before Christmas in not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before that. So I guess that would have been December of 2020. And because we'd undergone a 2-year study. I mean, I'm doing the state of the city tomorrow, and I was reading over the 2019 state of the city. And in 2019, I laid out all of this. So 3 years ago now, and we did a solid waste study because we were seeking expert opinion about what we ought to be doing. And, we can survey people, but if they're not educated on the issues, what is the problem with a survey is it tends to be self-fulfilling, that people like what they have, don't necessarily know about the alternatives. And the reflexive thing to do is to say, I'm fine with what I got, as opposed to educating people as to why we need to make changes, and one of the things that we tried to put in the survey when Jeff Picorni and I tried to put in the survey were questions that tried to elucidate some of that. Try to say, is your question, is your response different if we were to tell you that it costs more to do it this way, or that this other option doesn't exist. Like, one of the things that we're up against that a survey will do nothing to change is the fact that Kimball charges us 50% more for bagged recyclables than loose recyclables on this contract. And what Cuyahoga Recycles, what the solid waste district is telling us, is that the next time the East Side Consortium goes out to bid, they probably won't even give us a price on bagged recyclables. So we're going to have to make the switch. And I don't want to find ourselves like in a city of Cleveland position where I can't even sign a contract for recyclables because I don't have the means to pick them up. And that's where this is headed.
What would
And
happen?
no
at that
survey
point?
would change that.
What would happen at that point if you didn't have the ability to do that?
The ability to do what?
Yeah.
If Kimball on the next contract said that we're not going to process bagged recyclables, then the only thing we could do, we would have to rush to find a way to collect loose recyclables, or we would have to do what some council members suggested, which is go strictly to having people drop off loose recyclables at the City Hall service yard. But as we've also discussed, the City Hall service yard isn't really set up for that. I mean, you're not going to have, we have 4,000 households in University Heights, and, if a quarter of them came through, and that it won't even be that many, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the equipment, we don't have the drive-through capability, we don't have the containers. It would be an ordeal to set it all up to do it the way it ought to be done, if that were the way to actually do it. Most communities have loose recycling in a cart for this reason, and that's why everybody's moving in that direction. Cleveland Heights is getting rid of their blue bags, and they're going to be going to carts. So, part of it's just that the MRFs aren't going to handle this stuff anymore. So if we want to continue to recycle, we got to put it in a form that they're going to take it.
But really, Mr. Mayor, this is
there's
not
no-
about recycling.
I know,
This is
Jim.
really
We're
not,
talking
yeah,
about
okay. All right.
single-use plastics, although there are some single-use plastics that people try to put in here, but that's not really the topic here.
Yeah.
You're talking about bags especially, but other single-use plastics probably too.
But
Jim, what would you propose we do? Getting back to the bags. I mean, like the 12 of us boycott. I mean, what's your proposal? How would we convince Heinz to do something that they don't want to do? I guess is what we should think about as a group.
Mhm.
My second thought is I like the mayor's idea of other things initially to engage. Maybe that's another, maybe there's a gym booth at the sustainability fair that's sign my petition to ban, bags, and you got a letter to Heinz with 1,000 signatures. I don't know. Maybe then that convinces them. And then I guess that the other thing is, I don't know what convinced Whole Foods to stop.
That's a good question. Elizabeth looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor regarding taking initial steps first, talking to people and trying to work it through. I'm no fan of plastic bags, and I'm not defending Heinz or Whole Foods or any of these establishments. My personal feeling is the Sustainability Committee, for its first venture out, to be against something, to protest against something, and to boycott something, and to say we don't like this and hold up picket signs. We're not going to win the support of the community if we do that right out of the gate. I don't think that's a good idea. In addition to that, there's an unfairness in this proposition, because many stores in University Heights use plastic bags, many. I've been to many, shop locally, many will pull out a plastic bag. At Heinz, if you can always bring your own bags, they take your own bags. That's easy enough to do. Any individual can do that. And if you don't want a plastic bag, you say, I only want paper bags. And they'll use only paper bags. No one says anything about that. They also have plenty of plastic items over in Whole Foods in containers, in little plastic containers that we can no longer recycle. So nobody is perfect, without a doubt. Again, I'm no fan of plastic bags. And I wish they were outlawed in the whole state of Ohio, but that will never happen in the single-use plastic bags. But we do have individual choice when we go to places of what kind of bags we want to use by bringing our own. And I don't think it's a good idea for the Sustainability Committee to do this right out of the gate. We should, talk things over first. And I think Matt's idea is very good. Of more education at the sustainability fair. But I mean, that's something I really thought about after looking at it on the email, that it just didn't seem, it didn't sit well with me. And that's my personal view.
Yeah, I agree. I want to stay positive and positively engage the community in things that we can do. As they, we have to be careful what we choose if it's going to cause a lot of backlash,
It's not
Well, I
about
think
what we don't
maybe-
want. It's not about what we don't want. It's about what we'd like to see and how change can be made, and educating people and putting it into a more proactive motion where people can have an understanding and awareness and open their eyes and realize they can do things differently.
Elizabeth, do you also oppose having Cuyahoga County ban reusable plastic bags? Sorry, not single-use plastic bags. Do you oppose that proposal?
No, of course not. I said I wish the whole state of Ohio banned plastic bags. Jim, I'm from California. They banned plastic bags years ago there.
How did that happen?
I don't think, I wish we didn't have them. What I'm saying is I don't think it's a good idea for us to have a boycott and to picket. And I'm not saying that as someone who's never done it. I'm a crone. I was back in the 60s doing a whole lot of marching and a whole lot of picketing and a whole lot of boycotting. So I do claim my crone status here.
Okay.
I can agree with Elizabeth on this one. The successful recycling, and the recycling meaning the single-use plastic bags is included, is when you change the culture. It's not just, in my opinion, this is my part of the opinion, is just throwing everybody a recycle bin and say put stuff in it. Because they're going to put garbage in it, just like they've done in Cleveland. I don't think that's a place also for us to start either. But I agree with Elizabeth that, you can get a single-use plastic bag a lot of places. Heinen's is just one of them. And I think, I said earlier, I don't use plastic bags. I don't use them at Heinen's. I don't use them at Whole Foods. I don't use them to pick up my dog poop. I don't use them when I go to PetSmart. If they say, do you need a plastic bag? I say, no, I don't need one. Or I bring a canvas bag. So there's lots of ways to make a statement and also to eliminate the need. So I agree.
There
with
used to be a
Elizabeth.
thing where you were offered paper or plastic. Well, maybe
still are.
plastic shouldn't even, maybe plastic just shouldn't be one of the choices. It's you're either bringing your own bag, or if you don't have, then they've got a paper bag, which at least can be recycled.
So
What
I guess
about
we're
kind of in the middle here? Could we do something like, we're talking about an educational effort, which is obviously needed, to wait till the sustainability fair? Or could we as a committee put together a letter urging all the local merchants to stop using plastic bags, and then maybe get it published or put out in social media or something like that? What do you think, Jim? As a starting point.
I don't think that's a bad idea, John, but recycling is not something that just came up in the last couple of months. Recycling has been around for at least 50 years. And if people don't know about recycling now, if they don't practice recycling after 50 years that I personally am aware of, then I'm just too old to launch into oh, by the way, you could and should recycle. That to me to me, we're way beyond that. And I have not seen a meaningful change in corporate behavior. These are corporations that are doing the bags. The reason that Heinen's, one of their owners, whoever it was that wrote this article on cleveland.com, the reason he eventually got around to naming was cost to Heinen's. And my point is that every company, Heinen's is one, there are many others as well, that every company that says, oh, it's too expensive, I'd have to charge more for what I sell, they are really transferring the cost to the public and indeed to the whole planet. So it's clear to me, and it's fine. I mean, I'm not upset about it. Clear to me that the members of this committee are not inclined to direct action. If people want to post things on social media, great. I would just say that I think disposable plastic bags actually came into use after the original Earth Day. I could be wrong about that.
That may be. I think that is correct, Jim. That they did come about later, given how long Earth Day has been around. And
It's not that I'm totally opposed to direct action eventually, but I think we got to lay the groundwork first.
Well, again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. What can we do to convince them otherwise? I mean, a lot of these climate initiatives we propose cost money up front, and some save money down the road and save the planet down the road. That's kind of the idea.
I say everything gets back to education, information. Let's make better use of media to be able to get a message out to our residents in the bulletin, in social media channels. And I would say if we can get Mike Cook here for the next meeting, and that would be very helpful. How can we utilize the channels that are already existing for the city in promoting better use of recycling and less things that are going to get out into the trash, and including, and it gets back to what I had been promoting with Rust Belt Riders. All of that hand in hand is going to make some impact, and we can talk about that. We can talk about not using the plastic, even if you have those businesses that are utilizing it. Maybe at the very least we can get them to promote alternatives to that, even if they say, no, we have customers who want it. Well, maybe we can push to get them to use less of it.
Jeffrey, how long has Rust Belt Riders been doing their thing? About?
I don't, that 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Easily
Take-
about
take
3
a-
years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that I'm
scaling
aware
up
of, but much
fast.
longer probably, since they've been working with the brewery.
Yeah, they've continued to grow, and they've got the in addition to the drop off and the pickup, they also do some commercial work. But
My real point is my real point is not the history of Rust Belt Riders. However long they've been at it, I believe I heard you say they had 25 people in University Heights, 25 households out of 4,400. I wonder
are
how
20
many.
go ahead.
I just wonder how many households how many subscribers do they have in, say, University Heights, Shaker Heights, and South Euclid, where they seem to have already had these barrels?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know.
I believe in the podcast that the Eco Speaks CLE podcast, I believe they referred to that they're up to over 3 million pounds of waste a year.
How many
it's scaled
pounds?
up
I think
very quickly.
I think a lot of what they do is commercial waste.
And-
So it's not
Yes.
just the, local people.
And they did just sign a contract with Heinen's. They're handling all of their composting.
Oh, that's
Also, it's
Okay, good.
interesting in the areas where I'm been doing the drop off. There are 3 bins that they have at Bexley Park. There were 2 over at the Unitarian Church, and I think I may have mentioned before, there may be at least 6, I think more like 8 over at the Nature Center, and that's just one of 3 things in Shaker. What Zoe had told me in my conversation with her and her email response to me today is she expects that our numbers will grow, will easily triple if we had a bin, because the people that are members right now would certainly be more apt to go over to the Walt and go to one of the other locations. But as they're doing it and they tell more people who would then be looking to do it here within our city instead of going elsewhere, there's the thought that if we get enough interest and enough people being involved in it, just like they had done with Shaker, they'd be interested in having another location, perhaps over by the pool. Here we have 2 parks. Certainly, of the 2, the one that you'd want to do something with would be at the Walt first, but to have a second location would be good as well. I'll include some pictures in my email about it to share with everyone.
I know it's
Is there
getting.
some,
Go ahead, Jim.
sorry, no, my last question, and I realize this is a meeting about Rust Belt Riders. I take it this is a commercial enterprise. It's a company, it's not a government agency. Is there
Right.
some reason that they couldn't arrange to have a bin in that parking lot out that's behind Cedar Center? Does it have to be a park?
No, it doesn't have to be a park, but I think it's, I think I sent the link to
Yeah.
everybody with locations. And for example, in the east side, I had mentioned a couple without you having to go to the link. The dealership in Shaker Heights is the other one. They've got Lowe's Greenhouse in Bainbridge, in Cleveland Heights at the Coventry Peace Park, on Larchmere, behind Something Good to Eat, Mayfield Civic Center. So that's just some, and out east. They have quite a number of places on the west side. They've got a couple in Lakewood, Fairview Park, Detroit Shoreway, Tremont, and Ohio City, and others.
Yeah, I guess the only requirement is they just need someone to host them. And I think public spaces, having a partner, I mean, that
Technically, for them to be behind Cedar Center as well, there's no reason that couldn't be done if there was enough interest in that, I suppose.
Right. It just so happens that with that parking lot, we would have to talk with the owner of that plaza, that management company, and see if that would be something that they'd be willing to have there. And whether they would expect to be reimbursed for it. Or,
It doesn't, it doesn't take up a lot of space.
right,
So
but it
that
could
may-
take up some space. And if it's one
Right.
less parking space, they may view that as having some kind of value.
Yeah.
Mhm.
frankly, for the Walt, I know we're trying to wrap up here. I personally like that location because it's a place that people already go. It's a visible place,
Mhm.
and it could help help to drive behavior
Yeah.
by people seeing that as an option that they could incorporate into their day.
Yeah. All right, I know it's almost 9 o'clock. We've been meeting on Tuesdays, 2 weeks from now because of President's Day. This is a city council evening. So Brian and I are both otherwise engaged elsewhere.
Want to go back to Wednesday?
The Wednesday, the day after that, the 23rd, that would work for me. Brian, everyone else?
It's good for me.
I don't
Yeah,
have my
sounds
calendar.
good.
All right. Well, that would tend to make sense. If it doesn't work for everyone, hopefully, well, I mean, I'm fine going back to Tuesdays then after that. Tuesday the 8th, if we're going to do this every couple of weeks, would be the one after that. So yeah, well, so why don't we go ahead and say Wednesday the 28th. And tentatively, because if we want to have Michael or Mike Cook and Ben here, I got to make sure that works for them, that they don't have something else going on.
Wasn't that the 23rd?
I'm sorry, the 23rd. You're right. Thank you. 23rd. Okay, Wednesday the 23rd, 7 p.m. Check.
Mayor, could you tell us a little bit about the finance committee? I've never attended one. Is this just a discussion at city council and we can watch, or?
You can
do
watch.
people
They don't
participate?
take, yeah, they don't really take public comment at these. That's not to say that they couldn't, but they wouldn't typically. It's a joint meeting of the finance committee and the finance advisory committee. So the advisory is our citizens with some sort of that have been selected by the council to serve based upon interest and some possible expertise with numbers or with municipal finance. That's a bonus if they have that, or finance in general. But it's a joint meeting of the council and of the advisory. And they're going to talk about the budget that administration put together for 2022. And my feeling is that it's ready to go, that it's ready to be passed. I don't think that's a feeling that's shared by everybody on council. And we will see, what they want to do and how they want to approach some things. I will tell you, for instance, that one of the things that was on last night on the agenda, and depending on when the feed cut out, was the Cedar Road discussion. And I think most people support the idea of paving Cedar Road in general, but they didn't want to commit last night to that project before the meeting that they're having tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Thursday, regarding all of the budget, including that project. So that item was tabled instead of
Might
moving forward. Yes. What was
might
that?
might the proposals that you've set forth,
Mhm.
if they're not approved in total, do they look to approve things conceivably in part?
Well, yes, I mean, we have proposed a budget, and if they go on the record and say, well, take the mayor's budget and delete this item, and this item, and then put that in a bill and pass it, well, then that could be one way that they go about that. Or, hopefully there's a little bit more collaboration that goes on where I get some of the things I want, they get some of the things they want. One of the things that I had done when I released the budget was to say, if there are other things that council wants to focus on, in addition to these, let's talk about them. But it's been less about adding anything and more about taking things away. I think that's a fair assessment. So, 4 years ago, and I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but 4 years ago, I took over when there was allegedly a $2.5 million surplus. Turned out there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debts and unpaid bills. So there wasn't really that surplus, but we do by ordinance keep a reserve fund now, which is something that we created. My administration created with the council with, which happens to be $2.5 million. My budget preserves a $2.5 million reserve, which is, just happens to be coincidentally the amount that supposedly was the much vaunted, much celebrated supposed surplus that I supposedly got, but didn't really. And then, and we've been carrying over a $5 million carryover for the last 2 years. Whenever there's discussion about deficit budgets, it sounds as if once we save $1, we're never allowed to spend it again. But we are carrying more than double the reserve amount at this point, and in an inflationary economy, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we are sitting on cash that becomes worth less over time, when there are things that the city really needs. Anything from paving streets to buying these carts. So anyway, I guess I'm practicing for Thursday.
Can I just add one observation, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
The finance committee is not the city council. The finance committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, has 3 members, not 7. And I think it has 3 members with an alternate.
Yeah.
So we're not really talking about what the city council is going to vote for or against. We're talking about what 3 members of the city council are going to vote for or against. This is a long, ongoing history, as most of you may or may not know. But I think it's important that we not conflate the finance committee and its chair with the city council.
Well, that's a good point, Jim. Like Brian here is not on the finance committee. And the finance committee members are Michelle Weiss, John Rock, and Justin Gould, and the alternate is Barbara Blankfeld. So
Endorsement of 2019.
So the three members that are on the committee are, they will vote, but that vote, then that bill goes to, the ordinance would go to the full council for a vote there. So it's not like they're not the last word, but they're the next word. If that makes sense.
They're the word before the word.
Well, yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be people that move to amend, to add things or change things that once it comes out of committee. But, that's a little bit trickier doing it on the floor of the full council versus, doing it in committee. But if you're not on the committee and you have an opinion, and so there's something you want in, there's something you want out, things do get amended from time to time on the floor of a city council meeting.
But, since we're chatting here after 9, one example that I would cite here are the welcome signs, the new logo welcome signs. Last year, for whatever set of reasons, we don't need to go into it now, the city collected more money than the budget thought, as it were, and spent less.
Mhm.
So when it came time at the end of the year, I'm talking about 2021 here,
Mhm.
to go ahead and order these signs
Mhm.
that needed to be replaced,
Mhm.
the excuse given for not doing it was, well, yes, we have the money and we could do it and we should do it, but it's not in the budget.
Oh,
I
budget.
recall one member of this finance committee in particular going on, no, we can't do anything because it's not in the budget. And that discussion ended. I have no idea the status of those signs now. Haven't seen any discussion. I guess they're in your budget proposal, but
They
that
are,
seems to me to,
yeah, they are in my
So I'm just
budget
saying-
proposal. And
Yeah.
yeah, the budget proposal is to do the signs that were originally proposed in 2019. So we are now 3 years behind on what we called, I don't mind this to sound ironic, the Priority One sign program, which was scheduled to be completed in 2019. And that's the thing is that there are additional signs besides this first wave of signs. Like this doesn't even include a new sign at City Hall or a new sign at Purvis Park, which, City Hall doesn't really have a sign. Purvis Park has one of the old door knocker signs. If we do the Priority One signage, Purvis will still have an old door knocker sign. That's in the next wave of signs. But, we are 3 years later from, the first time we tried to do the signs.
Mayor, could you tell me again who's on the finance committee? It's Justin, Michelle, and who's the third person?
Justin, Michelle, and John Rock. Mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to get going, but.
Oh, that's all right.
I will
We're
definitely,
wrapping up.
definitely be at the finance committee.
Okay, all right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate taking the time to talk, appreciate your time, and we will see you. If we don't see you before, we'll see you on the 23rd.
And I'll see you on Friday.
Yes, and Jeffrey, we'll see you on Friday. Okay, all right. Thanks.
Have a
everyone.
good night, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.